Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Neil Patel, publisher, co-founder of the Daily Caller, will be with us at 5:30. We will talk to him about Facebook retiring its so-called fact-checking operation. Neil knows all about that. He'll chat with us at 5:30 on that subject. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Today, right about at the top, the first order of business practically, the United States House of Representatives passed a piece of legislation called the Laken Riley Act, which would require federal immigration authorities to detain illegals who commit theft in the United States of any kind, and it would allow states to sue the Department of Homeland Security for any harm caused to their residents because of illegals. Well, it's about damn time. That seems important. The United States Senate also taking up this legislation this week, expected hopefully to pass very rapidly now that Republicans are in charge. It's a really big deal. And you would think every member would be for this. This is about as common sense as it gets. But instead, today, the House passing this legislation 264 to 159. Every Republican voted for it. 48 Democrats ended up voting for it, to their credit. But the rest, 159 Democrats voted against it. What? Why? Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal was among the Democrats who voted against it. Here's what she said today.
Many of us in Congress are parents. Imagine your child is with a group of kids grabbing an after-school snack at a 7-Eleven, and one of them chooses to just snitch a little candy bar off the shelf. The shop owner calls the police, and all the kids are arrested for shoplifting. If your child is a DACA recipient, someone who has lived here nearly their entire life, they are now subject to mandatory detention under this bill.
Everything about this is so stupid, including the fact that there are no DACA recipients who are children. Not anymore. The cutoff was long ago. And there are no kids who are DACA recipients. The whole thing is so stupid. Joining us now to sort through all of this and to tell us what happened today, Congressman Pat Fallon from Texas is on the phone. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Vance, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. The Laken Riley Act passing Congress today, and I noticed some Democrats supported it, but 159 voted against it. Why is that?
Well, you know what? It's a head scratcher. It's just that obviously, unfortunately, some of them are really just committed to, I believe this in my heart of hearts, anything that will benefit the United States, they just put us last. They put American citizens last. Vince, I say all the time that if you're not safe, then you're not free. And this bill is simply going to make Americans safer. This bill shouldn't be partisan. This bill isn't regional. This bill has, no ethnicity attached, nothing. It is just good for America and Americans, and only 48 Democrats chose to vote to put American citizens first.
Laken Riley was murdered in cold blood by an illegal. What this legislation establishes is that if you're an illegal who commits lesser crimes, that those are used as a means to get you out of the country. Seems like common sense.
Thank you. You know what? If somebody comes into our country illegally, and then while they're here, they also then decide that they're going to commit crimes, they're the first that need to go. They're at the top of the list. Again, shouldn't be partisan. It's common sense. You're not supposed to be here anyway. And then when you're here, you're committing crimes. Not like the Democrats always argue that everybody that crosses the border illegally are just wonderful people that want to live the American dream, and they're going to work really hard. Well, some of those folks are, other than them crossing the border illegally, which I do not support, because there's legal ways in which to do that.
Yes.
But there are many that are not. So I'm just going to we're going to call the ball and strike. That's what you do on your show. That's what we're trying to do. That's what the Republicans that are the adults in the room on the Hill are doing, or at least most of us. And we're going to move forward.
Many of the Democrats today who did vote in favor of the bill happen to be freshman congressmen. So I guess in some sense, not entirely corrupted by Washington just yet. And then there were 6 Democrats who, this is interesting, in the House, this is not the first time you've passed the Laken Riley Act. You did last Congress, and of course it went nowhere because of the Democrat-controlled Senate. Once again, it passes now out of the House, and there are 6 Democrats who actually changed their votes. Last year, they voted against it. These 6 Democrats, Congressman Brendan Boyle, Congresswoman Val Hoyle, Congresswoman Lucy McBath, Joseph Morell, Terry Sewell, and Richie Torres, all of them switched their votes, and they're now voting yes on this legislation. What do you think that's about?
Well, you got to look at where they're from, and I'm glad they all did, and I'm glad they see the light. Like, for instance, actually a good friend of mine, Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania, he's a Notre Dame grad, so am I. He's in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania just voted for Donald Trump. Now, if he ever wanted to, I haven't asked him, and I'm certainly not saying he's going to, but if he ever seeks, statewide office, this is a vote that they're going to look at. It's the people in Pennsylvania. And I bet you, and you saw this with voters in swing states, border security was a big deal to them. So I'm glad that Brendan voted with us in this. That's great.
Yeah, no, that's it's fascinating. And what it means is that in no small part they paid attention to what actually happened in the election. They read the writing on the wall. It's a shame it was only 6 Democrats who changed their vote.
Well, another thing, Vince, I met the new Democrat from Alabama. I didn't catch his name. He was a nice fellow. He won a seat that the U.S. Supreme Court ordered Alabama to redraw to a minority district or something close to it. Well, so the legislature couldn't get their act together, so a lower court drew it, and this fellow won. So it's a close district. It's not quite in play, but he voted for it because you know what's going to happen. I bet you the Alabama legislature draws something close to it this time, so it's going to be real purple. And if he doesn't vote for something like this, he's not coming back. Now, he might not come back anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it was in part political. But I'm glad, again, that he voted the right way.
Well, especially in Georgia where Laken Riley was murdered. And it's such a resonant issue in that state. Okay. So give us a sense of how this Congress is going, Congressman Pat Fallon. I think there was some contention around the Speaker of the House returning to that role. He did, of course, in the end, thanks in large part to President Trump's support, getting that across the finish line. And now, of course, the business of the House begins in earnest as the Laken Riley Act passes right away. What do you expect in the weeks ahead?
Well, I'm very glad that we got through that. I think, quite frankly, Mike had one of the toughest jobs in the country. And I think considering the slight margins that we had and the tough job in front of him, I think he did a very good job, quite frankly. And by the way, nobody ran for Speaker on the Republican side, Vince, in November. That was the time we nominate. Nobody ran. Mike not only won with most of those, he won with all of them. It was unanimous. So there shouldn't have been a discussion. The discussion was held in November, and everybody said we're going to stick with Mike. So to do it at the 11th hour when there's not even another viable candidate, there's no alternative, and President Trump has made it clear he wants to work with him, and Senate Majority Thune was ready to go too. It was really an unforced error. Now, I'm glad that it was caught quickly and taken care of. And this is what I told some of the members that were hesitant. I said, it's not like you're making a 2-year commitment here. If Mike or any other person that was Speaker doesn't perform, it only takes 9 members of the ruling party to do a call in the chair. So I think he's going to do a great job, and I think we're never going to have this discussion.
Can I just jump in for one thing?
Yeah,
I just want to make this point because this is a point that I've been making on the air ever since this all went down. I do think it's worth rattling his cage a bit, though. And the reason I say that is because you remember that, when we went into December and then we were served up that 1,500-page continuing resolution that I presume, didn't get a chance to read, like almost every other member. Nobody got to see it until it was put in front of you. We didn't get the 72 hours that the Speaker had committed to review that legislation. It was full of all sorts of nonsense that wasn't a simple continuing resolution. There were all sorts of reasons for people to be concerned that the leadership is deficient. And so in that sense, I don't mind that he gets his cage rattled a little bit. People have very low faith and low trust in Congress right now. I didn't want that stretching into Monday, January 6th, because I think President Trump needed the Speaker in place to do the certification. But me personally, and maybe I'm the only one in conservative media, I just didn't really get that worked up about the drama because I thought, well, good, just let him keep his head on a swivel and get the signal that we're all kind of watching closely.
Well, being in those rooms where they are literally behind closed doors, the cage is rattled constantly. And everybody's aware of the math that if you lose 2 members, you're not getting anything passed. So literally, you pair up with one other person, you have a veto.
Right.
So the cage has been being rattled for 15 months, and I've seen folks even try to extort personal gain from it all. Personal political gain. I want this committee. I want this this kind of garbage. But then they say in public, they tell our friends, "Oh, I'm doing it to make sure the conservative agenda gets done." Well, not really, but I'm just telling telling you the way it is.
Okay.
The Boston Strikes part. But again, if Mike doesn't perform, there won't be 9 people that want him out. There'll be 90 or 190. I just think that he will, because there is that redress. That there's an option for redress.
Okay. And then as far as the agenda goes now in the weeks ahead, what do you anticipate? I see President Trump saying that he'd be fine with 1 or 2 reconciliation packages. These are the most likely ways to actually get something done, given that the Republicans don't have 60 votes in the Senate, so they have to use these narrow legislative vehicles to achieve things. What do you expect is going to happen?
I think that it probably would be better to do the one big one and do that around April so we can make sure we get it right, because the Senate parliamentarians are going to have a lot of say and a lot of power in what's going to be allowed, believe it or not.
Right.
And then we've got to have that time, one big issue at a time that we can put in the reconciliation package in the House to make sure that we have the votes, and then make sure over in the Senate that they're squared away. And that is the one chance we have each budget cycle to do something without any Democratic votes. So it's good. And that, how it does. It's grind and sausage. There's a lot of people, at the table, a lot of seats at the table.
So what's at the top of that list? Is it border security and tax reform? Are those the big items?
I think, honestly, I think it's border security, extending the Trump tax cuts from his first administration. Those are the top 2 by far. And I would like to see slowing of the budget growth. I mean, heck, it doesn't even match inflation. It always exceeds it. So that's something that it's not only me, there's many members that like to see that. And then beyond that, outside of the reconciliation, things that we may be able to pass because we might be able to get 7 Democrats in the Senate. You got to think about that. And what are those kinds of things? I think that protecting free speech is important. I think that making sure the education system educates and doesn't indoctrinate.
Yes. And
there's ways in which you can do that cleverly to really put Dems on the spot. The ones that are up for re-election, next cycle, the ones that are in purple, or even a Democrat that's representing maybe a red state in the Senate, or if they have a district like that congressionally, and make them take those tough votes. Okay?
Yeah.
You can vote with us, or if you don't want to vote with us, you can lose next time.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you for always being willing to join us and be so candid about what's going on. Really appreciate you, and a Happy New Year, sir.
Thanks, Vince. Happy New Year.
There he is, Congressman Pat Fallon of Texas today, as the House passes the Laken Riley Act, which should have passed unanimously, but didn't, thanks to Democrats. All right. Donna is calling in from Frederick. She's on line 1. Hello, Donna. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. I just wanted to say, I don't know if you remember this vote, I'm sure you will, where the Democrats voted against deporting sexual pedophiles and predators. And it was something like 158, kind of similar to what we're seeing today. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was an interesting point. Maybe you could elaborate more on that, because I think that can of worms has been opened. And the floodgates, my goodness, it's coming. And people are going to be shocked. I have read things that will make you, I hate to even say it, throw up in your mouth with what some of these cretins have done. It is disgusting. And people need to see the truth.
I saw some of it. I saw some of this week that Elon Musk has been really tearing into the UK for the awful rape gangs that have been running wild over there, that they've allowed into their country. And some of the accounts of what has taken place against young girls is just honestly some of the most grotesque stuff I've read in my entire life, and I don't want to look at it. But
it's just repugnant.
It's just totally.
Really, and it's here too. Unfortunately, it's here too. But the cover up. But in the end, What goes around comes around. I'm just waiting for the boomerang.
Yeah,
'Cause it's
well,
coming.
you said, I heard you say just a moment ago, it was something like 158 Democrats. You're just being humble. You know it's 158 Democrats because that is true. Back in September of this past year, exactly 158 House Democrats voted against deporting sex offenders. Sex offenses are not high enough in order to trigger that threshold for Democrats, apparently. But the U.S. House did pass that bill. But it just passed out of the House, to deport and make inadmissible criminal foreign nationals convicted of domestic violence and sex-related offenses. In fact, Elon Musk brought this up earlier this week and said that every single one of these guys needs to be voted out of the United States House of Representatives, the guys who voted against deporting illegals convicted of sex offenses. He said, quote, there is no excuse, and he asked people to post the list, which they did promptly do, of the people who oppose this law and want to keep illegals who are convicted sex offenders in America. Why would we want to keep them? Get rid of them so that they can't do this anymore. And yet, these Democrats, this is why they don't want to go for Greenland. They're not interested in bringing Canada into the fold. They don't want to take back the Panama Canal. They don't want to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. They hate us. Why would they want to give us more? Trump wants to. That was his big press conference today. He likes us. He likes this country. He says, heck, it should be bigger. It's so awesome. So we'll see if he can get that done. He's not going to get help from those Democrats, though. At least those 158 who would vote to keep sex criminals in the country. Coming up, Neil Patel will be with us. We're going to chat with him about Facebook's big decision today to collapse at least one component of its censorship operation. It's a big story. It's ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. 535 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook fame announcing today that his company is scrapping their censorship operation known as third-party fact-checkers and replacing them with something familiar that Elon Musk devised.
Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact-checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the U.S.
They've been too politically biased and destroyed more trust than they created, especially in the U.S., he says. All these years later, right after Trump wins. For more on this, I want to bring in a man who knows a lot about that program. Neil Patel is here. He's my friend, my longtime boss, co-founder and publisher over at the Daily Caller News Foundation. And importantly for this conversation, Check Your Fact, which has long been one of the fact-checking operations involved in Facebook's third-party fact-checking groups. Neil, good to talk to you as always.
Vince, good to be here.
Okay, let's so the basics here. Check Your Fact is a Daily Caller affiliated fact-checking operation, and it's been a part of this program. Give people a sense of what you had in mind as we set this up.
Well, Facebook came to us, and they were setting up this whole fact-check program, and most of the companies doing the fact-checks were left-leaning. So we thought there needed to be some balance in that system, and we were basically the balance. And I'm actually proud of the work our guys did in pushing back and adding some reality to a system that was dominated by, really left-wing kind of political actors.
Right.
And in my mind, the system itself, I think community notes is actually a better way to handle this. I think the people who pushed Zuckerberg to do this wanted to censor conservatives. In essence, they blamed the free flow of information on Donald Trump's first election, and they wanted to stop it. They can't win in the political arena, so stopping people from being able to discuss issues openly is like one of their strategies. It's disgusting. It's anti-American. And Facebook went along with it, and it could have worked a little better if Facebook wasn't so intimidated by these left-leaning organizations and didn't let them run wild, but they did, and it got totally out of control. So I guess I mean, it is good news that they're scrapping it.
Yes.
Certainly, one can laugh about the timing, but yeah, it's better. And honestly, there have been good players at Facebook this whole time who wanted to do the right thing and who didn't want to censor. And it does seem like they're having an opportunity now to exert more pressure. I think this scrapping of this program, things like adding Dana White on the board, those are good signs. I mean, I haven't analyzed the entire board, but my guess is like it's pretty left-leaning still, but at least it's better to put a Dana White on there. Mm-hmm. So these are all things I think we should celebrate. I think we should kind of allow ourselves to laugh a little bit at the timing of the whole thing at the same time.
Right. Yeah, no, it is funny. The power of the fact-checking organizations that were involved in all of this. I see today some of these groups, they're claiming, well, we didn't do any censoring. All we did was write articles about what was true and what wasn't. It was Facebook that decided to censor, which is goofy, right? Because the fact-checking organizations, they knew that as soon as they slapped one of these labels onto a piece of content, that it would disappear from Facebook, right?
Yeah, in essence, it definitely gets downgraded severely, and they know that. And it is about censorship if you do it wrong. The reality is there are completely fake things that get posted to Facebook, and oftentimes these are posted for financial reasons. They're trying to sucker people into doing something, or for political reasons, but they're totally fake. And I don't think it's crazy to have somebody be able to post on there that we've looked into this, we think it's fake, and then in the free flow of ideas, people can look at that and decide for themselves. The problem is that wasn't how the system worked, and that wasn't how the people who were hired, the vast majority of the people who were hired to sort of operate under the system were doing it. What they were doing is taking controversial political topics, and you and I, you live in this world, Vince, like things are complicated. It's not that often actually that most issues have like a hard black and white. There's like gradations in between, and people have different opinions and very subjective kind of views on all these things.
Yes.
And when people try to take a fact check program and use it to decide sensitive political topics in ways where you can't talk about immigration or transgenderism or so many of COVID or so many other issues in an open way because you're violating somebody else's idea of what you're supposed to be able to talk about or not, that's un-American.
Right.
And it was done way too often in this system, and it has a huge effect, including on elections. So it was really bad, and I'm glad it's gone. I hope that this isn't just blowing in the wind. I mean, Trump got elected. What happens in 4 years, we'll see. But let's be hopeful, I guess.
And as you point out, it was mostly left-wing organizations, almost entirely, except for the Daily Caller, who had any role in this system whatsoever on Facebook. And as a result, there were lots of conservatives and conservative news outlets who had their content suppressed by that censorship regime. It was hard to fight back against it. But I noticed that if it ever went the opposite direction, the left lost its mind. So there's I've been pointing people to an event in March of 2020. Politico ran an article claiming that Donald Trump had called the coronavirus a hoax. In fact, that was untrue. And Check Your Fact, the Daily Caller, pointed out that Politico was lying, that was untrue, that Donald Trump had said that the politicizing of COVID by the left was their latest hoax, not that COVID itself was a hoax. In other words, Politico was lying. Yeah. And so Check Your Fact imposes a fact check on that particular piece of content. And as a result, Politico's article got suppressed on Facebook. It wasn't able to reach a wider audience. And the left, Neil, as I remember then, and now looking back at the contemporaneous coverage, they lost their mind. They hated that you and the Daily Caller had any role in moderating this and establishing what was true and what was not. I mean, that experience should have been instructive that this was a terrible system in the first place.
Absolutely. And, look, this is all about power, and this is all about a much bigger system of censorship that starts with government funding, includes corporate funding, left-wing university funding, and it is pervasive. It is these sort of safety offices at all these social media platforms are dominated by left-wing characters, and the funding flows through the whole system, and it's designed to sway what people see. And in a democracy, when you don't have the free flow of information, and in essence, that's what this is. This is stopping the free flow of information, the battle of ideas, right? We can all debate things openly.
Yeah.
This gets in the way of that, and you can't have that in a democracy. And it's never applied to the left. You know, that in that example that you're giving, Facebook did lie. So I don't think there's anything that wrong with pointing that out.
Politico.
But what they do is
Politico lied, you mean?
Politico did lie, and I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing that out. The real abuse of this system was they had this form of fact check called needs context. So basically, anytime they had a fact that they didn't really like or they wanted to explain away, they would fact check it as wrong because it needs more context, meaning you're not giving more left-wing analysis of it. That was used. That's the biggest problem with the whole system, and that was used constantly. We never did those. We only called balls and strikes when it was clearly a lie, like that Politico article.
Yes.
And there's so many others like that. And even in that case, when we were right, and they know we're right because it's obvious to any sane person, they freaked out because they don't want anyone else getting in between them and their readership. And I understand that. But that's not even what the biggest problem was. The biggest problem was this pure abuse when there's an issue where there's no clear right or wrong. It depends on perspective.
Yeah.
And they use fact check to shut that down.
Neil Patel, the organizations that were a part of this third-party fact-checking operation, not just Check Your Fact, but AFP, which is a wire service, factcheck.org, Lead Stories, PolitiFact, Science Feedback, Reuters Fact Check, Televisa Univision, The Dispatch, and USA Today. How financially dependent do you think these organizations were on that contract with Facebook? In other words, like, do they exist? Do some of these organizations simply exist because Facebook was financing their existence?
Yeah, a couple of them. So some of them, as you noted, are news companies or wire services. And for them and for us, it was a relatively small portion of the business because we have a news company and 100 reporters and pumping out a lot of news articles. Besides, Check Your Fact was kind of a subsidiary. And there's a few that you listed that are in a similar boat to that. There's a few you listed that were completely dependent on this program, which will go away now.
So in other words, they're not long for this world unless they can figure out a way to make some other revenue.
Yeah, there's other programs. I think YouTube has one, and by the way, Google. So this is positive news on the Facebook front. We had one fully scaled free speech platform once Elon Musk bought X, which was great, and I think had a huge effect on the last election. Sounds like Facebook's moving in that direction. Let's hope that's the case. That would be two. But the big problem is Google, and YouTube is highly censored. But Google search is the very biggest problem. And if you Google search right now problems in this fact check program, you won't be able to find them because all you get are left-leaning news organization results or left-leaning organization results. You won't find a Daily Caller article or a Breitbart article because they're buried. And so Google search is still actually the biggest problem as far as censorship goes in America. This, again, is a positive move in the right direction. I haven't heard any movement at Google, but that would be the big one.
That's the big one. And that's like, last I checked, something like 90% of all global search is done through Google. And as a result, humanity's mind is made up by what they find on that platform. And if they can't find the truth, it's very distorted.
100%. And it's this whole censorship industry. Wikipedia is another huge part of it. Wikipedia is dominated by the left. And, Wikipedia is the online encyclopedia. It's supposed to be where you go to get facts, right? But if Google pulls all their facts from Wikipedia, which every person who's ever looked into it even a tiny bit knows is pretty hard left, actually, then you're getting a totally distorted view of reality, and that's where we're at.
Right, and all of the all of the algorithms that scrape Wikipedia use it as a knowledge base for their content too. So artificial intelligence, even Grok on Twitter, on X, it relies on Wikipedia in part. The smart speaker perhaps in your house or your phone's smart responses, so much of them are informed by Wikipedia. They may not even tell you that up front, but that's where they're pulling it from. And as a result, it's a very distorted filter that's being served.
Absolutely. We're a country that's supposed to be about free flow of ideas and debate. and expression. And as all that moved online, it started getting heavily censored, and it's had a hugely negative effect on the whole country.
All right. The great Neil Patel, the great and powerful Neil Patel. Sir, thank you very much for joining today. Good to talk to you as always.
Always great to talk to you, Vince. Thanks, man.
There he is. Neil Patel, co-founder, publisher of The Daily Caller and so many other operations. I didn't even mention he's right there with Tucker running the Tucker Carlson Network. Alp. I see an Alp can raised into the air. Corey's got one of them. It's nicotine. It's a nicotine product. Corey's got a problem. It's Neil's great. Neil's great. But that's Neil's perhaps the one guy on the planet who can give you this honest insider take on what the hell was going on in that program. This censorship program. Kind of fascinating that Zuckerberg is retiring it as he adds Dana White to the board. It's so funny. It's just so funny to watch what's happening. But that's what they're up to, and they're trying to curry favor with Trump. They don't want him to hurt them. That's part of it too. And they want to convince conservatives that it's still worth using their platform. I hate to tell them, though, it does seem like I know a lot of people who've just straight up retired from Facebook. They're like, I have no interest. I can't even see the content I want to see. You know, there's people, they want to share things, and they're worried that Facebook is going to drop the hammer on them just for sharing content with one another. It's insane. It's totally insane. We need more free speech in this country, not less. Also, a lot of legal news today involving President Trump as the left continues its never-ending smear campaign against him. Here's the update for you. Down in Florida, Judge Eileen Cannon continues to be an absolute rock star. She has ordered that Jack Smith is not allowed to release a report, that Merrick Garland is not allowed to release a report until the federal appeals court establishes whether or not Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed to the role. That's got to happen first, she says. So an official order today telling the Justice Department, you are not allowed to release any kind of disgusting, slanderous report about Donald Trump. Right now, mister, you're in the hot seat as the appeals court considers whether or not Merrick Garland straight up violated the law and the Constitution in appointing Jack Smith to be the special counsel. So good for Eileen Cannon. The left is angry about that. Let's see. Also, Jack Smith was expected to send his report to Merrick Garland as early as this afternoon, so that may have taken place already, but the court is telling them they're not allowed to disseminate it. Nobody associated with this is allowed to disseminate it. Also breaking today, there was an emergency appeal that President Trump's attorneys put before a Manhattan court this morning. It was 502 pages long to stop this January 10th, that's Friday, sentencing in Manhattan in this stupid bookkeeping case that the left is crowing about. They say, he's a convicted felon. He's a convicted felon. And they have no idea what they're even talking about, but they want this to be so. And Wacky Juan Merchan, the judge in New York, he's trying to get this sentencing going on Friday. He's already said that he's not going to impose any penalty of any kind, no fine, no jail time, no nothing. He just wants to say, yes, I've sentenced you as a convicted felon. You are a convicted felon now. That's the whole plan. He wants to muddy him up. It's the wrap-up smear. The appeal was filed today by Trump's team. A Manhattan appeals court listened to the appeal. They had some oral conversation today on the subject, and then they instantly said, no, denied. Sentencing continues. We'll see. President Trump's legal team is pulling every rabbit it can out of the hat right now. All these tricks ahead of Friday to stop this nonsense. Staying in the fight. The legal battles continue. But I don't think President Trump seems that bothered by it. Do you? You see him at that press conference today? He seemed as relaxed as ever as he gets ready. Just now less than 13 days to assume the presidency once again. May these next 2 weeks barrel forward. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.